Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Gist Me the Bible Stories brought to you by Universal Scroll. As always, I'm your storyteller, Yossi, and today we're going to be continuing with the story about Moses. Now, in the last episode, we talked about Moses and how he was born and how, God called him into ministry. Now, we're going to be continuing from there. We last stopped when Moses and Aaron met each other and exchanged details as to what God told each of them. Now they came to Egypt. Now, when they came to Egypt, the first thing that they did was to assemble the elders of Israel to tell them what God had told them. And of course, they performed the signs and wonders that God showed them. Now, if you don't know what the signs and wonders are, then check out the previous episode. So they performed these signs and wonders, and the elders believed. They immediately knew that, yes, this was the real deal. These guys knew their stuff. Now, after the elders had believed, and of course the people had believed, then Moses and Aaron left their midst and went to meet Pharaoh to inform him of the instruction from God. Now, they informed Pharaoh that they needed 3 days to journey to the wilderness to sacrifice to God. Now, Pharaoh was like, who is your God? I don't know your God, so why would I want to listen to your God to release my servants to go out to sacrifice? What's all that about? So he refused their request. And Pharaoh did not just stop at refusing their request. He was like, I think you guys have enough time on your hands for you to request to leave your work and go to sacrifice to your God that I don't even know. So I'm going to make you do some work since you're so idle. So he then informed his officials that they should not provide the straws that the Israelites would need to make bricks, that they should go source for the straws themselves and use it to make the bricks. And yet he still required the same output from them at the end of the day. Now, this was a lot of burden for the Israelites because that was like double work. They had to now start looking for the straws and still had to deliver what they were delivering every single day. And it was impossible. So the Hebrew foremen, which were like the top leaders for the laborers for the Israelites, were beaten for not being able to fulfill their requirements. So they went to meet Pharaoh to beg and ask that, we are not being provided with the straws, so that's why we are not able to churn out the expected requirement that you're asking us. And Pharaoh did not even listen to them at all. It was like, well, you guys were requesting for, some time off to go and sacrifice to your God and all that. So, I'm not going to change this law. You guys are going to go fetch your straws to make the bricks, and you're still expected to deliver the requirements for which you were delivering before. And so these Hebrew foremen were really upset. And as they were going out, they saw Moses and Aaron, and they were like, God is going to judge you for what you did. You have now increased our labor and all of that. And so Moses cried out to God and was like, God, what's going on? You asked me to come here and speak to Pharaoh, and I have done that, but nothing is happening. You have not done anything. And in fact, Pharaoh has even worsened the situation of the Israelites because of my coming. This is not cool, right? So God then responded that he should not worry, that he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he's the one that promised them the land of Canaan, which they were living as foreigners back then. But he's going to give them the land, and that he should not worry about Pharaoh. He's going to ensure that Pharaoh will let the people go. But Pharaoh will not do that, based on his request. Pharaoh will not let them go, just easily. He's going to use Pharaoh's stubbornness to show his mighty power in Egypt so that they will know for a truth that he is God. So Moses then rushed off to tell the Israelites everything that God said, but they were like, that's what you said last time, and see where we are now. We are now even worse than we were before. Please, I beg, let me carry your wallet and be going. And this was because of the extra labor that they were experiencing. They were not even in the mood. So God then told Moses to speak to Pharaoh, and Moses was like, I'm unskilled, and I have issues with the way I talk. And so God said, I'm going to make you like a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, is going to be like your prophet. So I'll tell you what to say, and then you tell, Aaron, and Aaron will, do it in the presence of, Pharaoh. So that was how it was going to go down. God then told Moses that Pharaoh is going to ask you to perform a sign to show, your authority, and this is what you're going to do. And God then revealed what Moses was going to do. And rightfully so, when they went to meet Pharaoh to tell him to let the people go, Pharaoh was like, show me a sign, to show your authority, show me a miracle. So Moses then instructed Aaron to toss his staff on the ground, and when he did that, the staff turned to a serpent. Now Pharaoh was like, where are my magicians? Where are my sorcerers? Where are my, wise men? Let them come and do the same thing. And so he brought his wise men, his magicians, his sorcerers, and each of them tossed their staff on the ground, and it turned to a snake. But guess what happened? Aaron's staff, which had turned to a snake, ate up all of the staff of all of the wise men and sorcerers and magicians, ate all of them up. Yes, that was exactly what happened, to show the ultimate power of God. Because yes, the dark side has its power, but it's nothing compared to the power of God. And this was to show that, when God's power is revealed, even the power of darkness cannot compare. Yes, they might try to do whatever they want to do. They're counterfeit, miracles and counterfeit power, but it bows to the power of God. That's why Aaron's serpent was able to swallow the serpents of all the other magicians. Every one of them, it swallowed all of their, snakes. So it showed that God's power was supreme. God's power was bigger, and God's power is constantly greater and bigger than the power of darkness. So yes, the darkness can try all of their gimmicks and schemes to, do evil things to people. But when you know the power of God and you wield that power of God, it would remove every work of the devil in your life. And of course, God's power would reign supreme in your life. So that was it for that day. Then God instructed Moses that he should go in the morning to the bank of the river Nile to meet with Pharaoh, because Pharaoh would always go there in the morning. And then he instructed Moses on what to do. And rightfully so, in the morning, Moses went with Aaron's staff as God instructed him. And when he went there, he saw Pharaoh. And then he told Pharaoh, he said, Pharaoh, you refused to obey the instruction of God. And this is what's going to happen. I'm going to use this staff to strike the river in this Nile, and it's going to turn to blood. And that was exactly what Moses did. Moses struck the water and it turned to blood, and the fishes in the river Nile died, and it started to stink. Then Moses told Aaron to take his staff and stretch it over the waters of Egypt, and they turned to blood. Everywhere in the land of Egypt was affected. The rivers, the streams, the pools, their reservoirs, every household felt it, because even the water that they kept in containers made of wood or stone, all of them turned to blood. So the people had to actually dig, near the river Nile to get some water to even drink. So God at least spared some water for them to be able to at least drink something. So the magicians then took the water and then, turned it to blood. I mean, that did not even make any sense. Why would you want to worsen the situation? Because there was a little water left, then you took some of it and then turned it to blood. If you really had power, you would just counter that miracle and stop it from being blood, right? And everybody would be okay. But they could not do that. They could not reverse the power. And that shows the difference. Of course, they could not do anything because it was God that was involved. God had already set it like that. Pharaoh was still hardened. His heart was still hardened. He refused to let the people go. So the next thing that God did was to release frogs upon the people of Egypt. Now bear in mind that Moses would always go to meet Pharaoh to say, let my people go. That's what God says. Let my people go that they may worship me. But he would always refuse. And that's when, God will now tell Moses what to do. And then this plague will happen. So anytime, a plague happened, it was because Pharaoh had rejected and refused the instruction of God to let his people go to worship him. So yes, the frogs were released. And of course, this was really a nuisance. I mean, imagine frogs everywhere, on their beds, in their rooms. Every place was covered with frogs. I mean, that was just disgusting. Now, guess what the magicians did? They decided to do their own miracle and, of course, created frogs too. So they added more frogs to the frogs that God had already released, making the situation even worse. So Pharaoh was then tired and begged Moses, you know what, I will let you guys go tomorrow. So Moses then prayed to God, and all of the frogs died, and it was, heaped together in a huge pile, and it was stinking. The whole of Egypt was stinking. Then Pharaoh still hardened his heart and refused to allow the Israelites to go. Then God, told Moses to strike the dust of the earth, and it all turned to gnats and insects, and it spread across the land of Egypt. Now, guess what happened? The magicians, the sorcerers, and all of Pharaoh's wise men could not replicate this miracle, and so they said, this must be the finger of God. And of course, another thing happened, which was that this plague did not affect the Israelites because they were spared. So the land of Goshen, where they stayed, was spared from all of these gnats and insects and frogs and everything. The Israelites were spared. Then Pharaoh begged again and said, Moses, you know what? I'll let you guys go tomorrow. So please let these gnats and insects stop. And Moses obliged and, told God, and God then stopped the gnats and insects. But did Pharaoh let them go? No, because he is strong-headed. He would not listen to reason. And so the next plague happened, which was, the death of many of the cattle of the Egyptians. Their horses, their donkeys, their lambs, their goats, many of them died. But guess what? The cattle of the Israelites were spared. Not even one cattle from the Israelites died. This was to show a clear demarcation between the people of God and the people of darkness. 1,000 may fall at your right hand, 10,000 by your left hand side, but it will not come near your dwelling. So don't get swamped by all of the issues around you. Just trust God and do not lean on your own understanding. Now, Pharaoh still refused to let God's people go, and so the next plague happened. Boils were released upon the people of Egypt, and these boils would break out and turn into sores. This was really painful and annoying, and Pharaoh begged and said, I'll let you guys go tomorrow. Stop this. And so, Moses prayed against God, and of course the plague was stopped. But Pharaoh still did not let the people go. So Pharaoh was really deceptive. He was really stubborn. He just wanted to be relieved of the inconveniences, but refused to do the right thing, which was to let God's people go. Now Moses, led by the instruction of God, told the Egyptians that they should bring in their livestock and their servants from out of the fields, and they should enter into the house or any shelter, and none of them must be outside, because hails were going to be pouring down upon the land of Egypt. Now, you could say that this was obviously a test to see if the people of Egypt would respect and, honor God by obeying his instructions, or they would just go along with their leader like Pharaoh and reject the instructions of God. And of course, some people obeyed, but some did not. So those who did not obey and allowed their servants and their livestock to be outside paid the price. So when God gives an instruction, it is very important that we obey. And of course, God can give his instructions through, different men of God, through different servants of his. And it's important for us to, look at the vessels, because yes, we know that there are false prophets among us, but we're supposed to test every spirit, as the Bible says. So when you're able to discern that this is from God, then it's important that you obey. Now the same cycle of events happened. Pharaoh said he would let the people go. Moses prayed to God and begged him to relieve the Egyptians, and God accepted, but Pharaoh still refused to let the people go. And so the next plague happened, which was a release of locusts. The vegetations, the fruits, the trees were eaten up by this locust. And this was really painful for the Egyptians, because it showed that they did not have any food anymore, because their foodstuff were eaten up by the locusts. And of course, even the destruction that happened with the hailstorm that destroyed their crops and everything. So it was was a very devastating thing for the Egyptians. Now, this time around, Pharaoh decided to be somewhat, cunning. So he said, yes, you know what, I'm going to allow you guys to go. So Moses, who do you want to take along with you? So Moses was like, I'm taking everyone, the men, the women, the children, and the cattle. We're going to sacrifice to our God. And Pharaoh was like, wow, so you guys think that you're really smart. So I would allow you to take your children, and then you guys will go to sacrifice to your God. I mean, you guys will not come back. It's so obvious. You guys are not intending to come back. I am not going to allow you to take your children along. You guys can go and sacrifice to your God, but the children are staying. I mean, who will let their children stay back and they will now go? It's not possible. So that their children will now become the slaves? Never. So Moses then said, all right, then you hear from our God. And so the next plague happened. So God caused darkness to cover the entire land of Egypt. But the land of Goshen, which is where the Israelites were living, was bright. There was light there. But in Egypt, in other towns of Egypt, there was utter darkness. They could not even see themselves. The sun did not give its light. The moon did not give its light. The stars did not give its light to the Egyptians, only to the people living in Goshen. And this was really annoying. Now Pharaoh called Moses again and said, go with your children this time around, but you're not allowed to go with your cattle. And Moses was like, sorry, Pharaoh, we need to go with our cattle because we don't even know what we're going to sacrifice to our God. It's only when we get there that God would instruct us on the exact cattle to sacrifice and how to go about it. So we really have to go with our cattle. And Pharaoh was really mad at this point and was like, get out from my sight. I never want to see you again. And Moses was like, yes, I don't even want to see you at all again. So you're not going to see me again. And I'm going. And so he left, Pharaoh's midst. He was really angry. Pharaoh was angry. Everybody was pissed and they parted ways. And so Moses departed from Pharaoh's midst. And then God then, spoke to Moses and said, now I'm going to do my last great sign that would move the hand of Pharaoh this time around. He is going to let you guys go after this one. Now God then said he was going to kill the firstborn sons of every of the household of Egypt, including the firstborn of every of their livestock. He was going to kill all of them. And this time around, they will know for a truth that he is God. Now I know some people will be like, well, that's unfair. Why did God kill the firstborn sons of these people? Now these people were part of the evil. When all of these things were happening, when all of the wickedness was being, poured upon the Israelites, what did these people do? They were a part of it. It was in their very households that the Israelites were working as slaves and were labored and over-labored. And remember that these Egyptians were very much aware when Pharaoh decided to kill all of the male children born by the Israelites because he wanted to, cut down their population. Now that was about the time when Moses was born, and Moses was actually supposed to be killed, but by God's intervention, he was spared. So these Israelites had lost their sons. Any son that was born to the Israelites were killed by the order of who? Of Pharaoh. And these people did not say anything. They did not, challenge the authority. They did not say no. They did not riot. They did not tell Pharaoh not to do that. They did not, speak up for the Israelites. They watched as these Israelites were crying as their children were being taken from them and killed. Imagine you having a child, carrying a child for 9 months, and after the 9 months, you push the child out and it's a boy. First of all, throughout the 9 months, you're praying and begging God that this child would not be a boy because you don't want the child to be killed. And then you give birth to that child, and then you see that it's a boy, and then these Egyptians would take the boy from you and kill this child. And then these women are full of milk. They cannot milk, or they cannot milk a dead child. They are in pain. They are in pain from losing their children. They are in pain from all of the breast milk that is there that they cannot, pour out. All of those wickedness, and they are watching as the Egyptians are flourishing and enjoying their day, and they still have to walk in the households of these same wicked people for how many years? They were in Egypt for 430 years. So it's very easy to say, why did God do that? It was their cup that was full. They had done their wickedness for so long, and even when God was telling them to allow these Israelites to go, they still refused, and these same people refused to do the right thing, which was to force the hand of Pharaoh to allow them to go. So what do we learn from this? If you are in a place where the authorities are doing evil things to a certain type of people, to a certain tribe, to a certain ethnicity, to a certain race, and you're watching and you're not saying anything about it, but you're ignoring it because it's convenient for you, you're not speaking up against it, you're allowing it to thrive, when God is going to, pour his judgment, you're going to be part of it. Don't think you're going to escape it. You might not be the exact person that is, propagating the wickedness, but you were rightfully there and watched and did not speak up against injustice. So wherever you see injustice, speak up against it so that you'll be spared when judgment is supposed to come. Now, God told Moses to instruct the Israelites on certain things to do so that by the time he was going to pass through the land of Egypt, the Israelites will be spared. Their entire households will be spared. Now, he told them that on the 10th day of that month, they should kill a perfect lamb without any blemish, and they should smear the blood upon their doorposts, upon the two sides of their doorposts, and upon the lintel of their household. That's the upper part of their door. And they should eat the lamb with their households. And if the household was really small, then they can share the lamb with another household. All right. So they were to eat that lamb, and they were to dress in a certain way. They were to dress as people that were ready for a journey. So they were to wear their sandals. They should make sure that their loins are girded, because yes, by the time it was going to move through the land, they were going to be rushed out by the Egyptians. And this act in itself showed faith. For you to dress up as if there's victory already, even before the victory had come, that is faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. So you have not yet seen it, but you're already acting like you have already received it and you're already anticipating it because you know that it is coming. So they were ready to receive that miracle. They were ready to leave Egypt. And so they were dressed the part, they were ready. So they obeyed that and they did all of the things that God instructed them to do. And just as God said, he moved across the land of Egypt, and every of the firstborn sons of every household in Egypt died, along with the firstborn of their cattle. They all died. And so there was mourning in Egypt. Now, before the Israelites left, God had instructed Moses to tell them to go to their neighbors and request for articles of gold and of silver. And these people gave them what they asked for. They gave them clothing, they gave them spices. And of course, it was rightfully theirs because they labored for it and were not given the rewards of their labor. So now it was time for them to reap their rewards. And so they gave them all of the things that they requested, and they were moving with a lot of wealth, which was rightfully theirs. And so these Egyptians really wanted them to go because they were in mourning, and they were even afraid that they too would die if the Israelites stayed any time longer. So they were like, please hurry up and go. They should have done this many years ago to have avoided all of this. So anyway, they experienced the mighty hand of God, and they really wanted the Israelites to get out of their land. And so the Israelites journeyed out of Egypt with a lot of wealth. Now, as they were going, Pharaoh now thought to himself and was like, why would I even let these people go? Why would you guys release our servants? Why would you release these laborers? So who is going to do this work? No, we cannot let them go. We've already lost a lot. So, let's just have them back. So he, took his chariots, and of course his chariot men, they were about 600 in number that he carried along with him, and they started chasing after the Israelites. Now, as they were going along, they saw Pharaoh coming along, and they had gotten to, the Red Sea, and there was no way for them to escape. So they were really pissed, and they were like, Moses, is it that there is no grave in Egypt that you allow us to come and die by this shore of this river? Why would you allow us to come and die here? So Moses then prayed to God, and then God told Moses to stretch forth his hand over the sea, and it parted into two. So there was a wall of water at the right and on the left, and so they were just walking in between. I'm sure it must have been a beautiful sight of wonder. And so they were going through the sea. Now the pillar of cloud that was going ahead of them went behind them to, demarcate between the Israelites and the Egyptians, to separate the two of them so that the Egyptians could not come close and these Israelites could, cross easily. Now the pillar of cloud was darkness to the Egyptians, but it was bringing forth light to the Israelites. Now, as they were moving ahead, they had crossed the Red Sea, and the Egyptians were following along, and they were in the middle of the sea. And God allowed their chariots' wheels to be clogged so that they could not really move. So it was very difficult for them to move. And so God then told Moses to stretch forth his hand over the sea, and the water came back to normal, and Pharaoh and his horsemen and their chariots all drowned in the sea. Now, Pharaoh, what were you thinking? You actually saw a whole sea divide into two. Instead of you to give yourself sense and just go back and say, no, this one is different, you still felt like you wanted to challenge the people of God. That must have been a different level of I'll say stupidity. Or is it that you were not thinking? So anyway, Pharaoh and his horsemen and their chariots all drowned in the sea. Now, this shows that God would always fight for his people. Now, there could be that season and those periods of, suffering, of, things not going so well for you. And you're wondering, these people that are not even serving God, they're enjoying, they're getting rich, they're flourishing, they're having so much abundant wealth and blah, 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 blah. And you're just saying that the wicked are prospering. And you're wondering, God, why? I'm doing things rightly. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. So why is it not happening for me? And you're saying that generations have gone by and it was the same thing that your parents experienced and your grandparents experienced. And you're wondering, when is it going to be my turn? When is this going to be a difference? When will God show his hand in my life? Now, God had already set, what was going to happen. He had seen that the Israelites would be put into slavery in Egypt. He had seen ahead, and he had already said the exact time that they were going to go. And God ensured that he brought them out at the right time. He also wanted for the Canaanites, the people that were living in Canaan, for their cup to be full, so that it would be time for their own judgment too. And so it would not be like he's doing anything improper, because God had already seen ahead. God sees the end from the beginning, and he knew that the Canaanites were hardened in their hearts. They would not listen to his instructions. They would not obey him. And so he had rightfully given the land of Canaan to the Israelites, but he did not just want to give them prematurely. He wanted it to be, right. He wanted his judgment to be fair, where it to be really because he has looked upon their sins and he knows that they deserve to be taken out of the land. In all the lands belong to the Lord, so he's the one that can determine who stays where. So even if the land was rightfully for the Canaanites, God decided that it was not going to be for them anymore. He was going to give it to the Israelites because they did not obey him. And when the Israelites disobeyed God, they too experienced, being taken out of their land because they disobeyed him. So God is the one in control of everything. All we have to do is to rely on him, to obey him, to listen to his instructions, and just do what he says. He's the maker of the entire world. He's the maker of the universe. He's the maker of this earth, and he's the maker of you and I. So all we have to do is to trust him, to depend on him, to lean on him, and not lean on our own human understanding. And when things really seem really tough and difficult and we're wondering where God is, let's still hold on to God and know that his plans are perfect, and in the right time he will deliver us. He will do what is right at the end of the day. And we know something for sure: the end is already victory, because God has already shown us this, the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, to show us that we are going to resurrect from the dead. So even if death is inevitable for this mortal body, we know that we have overcome death, because Jesus Christ overcame death and rose again from the dead to live forever. And he's assuring us that he's going to do the same for us. The last day is going to raise us up to live with him forever. So we need to trust God, and we're going to see how this, events of Moses and these plagues and all of that is going to play out some sort in the last days, because I ask you to also do an amazing research to check out Revelations and the events that would happen before the coming of Jesus Christ, where God is taking us to our own promised land, and we'll see some sort of replay of what happened in Egypt, some sort of replay where it's going to show his mighty hand before then moving us out of this old world into the new. So I hope you love this video. I hope you really enjoyed this. I enjoyed telling the story, and you need to read the Bible itself to get some of the finer details. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this, please subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell to get notified when we release a new video. The reason for Gist Me the Bible Stories is to allow, adults who did not really enjoy Sunday school, who were not, able to be a part of Sunday school because perhaps they were not Christians at that time, to experience the gist of the Bible in a very amazing way. And so it allows them to understand the Bible better and to put the stories of the Bible into the right context. So I hope you love this, and I'd like to see you in the next video. Until then, we can hang out on our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Love you guys. Bye.